China to join Ukraine, war rages Putin. Okay, deep breath. It is Tuesday, January 27, 2026. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Ari in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, something that might just change the entire trajectory of the war in Europe. We were unpacking that headline I just shouted at you. No, take a breath. Beijing hasn't officially declared war, but, and this is a big but, Ukrainian President Zelensky has just dropped an absolute bombshell. He's claiming foreign mercenaries from China have been spotted fighting alongside Russian troops in the Kharkiv region.
Which is a seismic shift, if it's confirmed. I mean, we're not talking about economic back channels anymore. We are talking about boots on the ground. And it just complicates everything because at this exact moment, you have the president of Finland claiming that Beijing effectively holds the kill switch for this entire conflict.
The one phone call theory. It sounds like something out of a spy novel, but it's a real dominant geopolitical doctrine coming out of Helsinki right now. And we are going to dismantle that theory piece by piece to see if it holds water. But we're also going to look at the mechanics of this so-called shadow fleet, specifically how $150 billion in oil is just bypassing sanctions to keep the Russian heart beating.
And we absolutely have to talk about this leaked peace plan everyone's whispering about in Brussels, a plan that would cap Ukraine's army and, well, essentially force a surrender in slow motion. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Finland is explicitly warning that China is watching Western resolve in Ukraine to calculate their timeline for the Indo-Pacific.
So if the West blinks.
If the West blinks in Kyiv, the countdown for Taiwan accelerates massively.
Okay, so we have mercenaries in Kharkiv, we have diplomats in Beijing, and a shadow fleet moving oil through the Baltic. Let's start with the Finns, because this one phone call idea, it implies a level of control that suggests Russia isn't just an ally of China anymore.
No, it suggests it's a subordinate.
Exactly. So what's the logic here from the Finnish president, Alexander Stubb?
It's a really fascinating insight into how that power dynamic has shifted since 2022. Stubb, who, took office back in 2024, has been analyzing the structural dependency of Russia. His argument is that Russia has basically ceased to be an independent economic actor.
Right.
The metaphor he uses is that China is in the driver's seat. We always hear about this no-limits partnership, which implies two superpowers standing back to back.
Yeah, equals.
Right, equals. The Finnish assessment is that it's actually one superpower and one client state.
So in this analogy, Putin is just the passenger.
He is a passenger who's locked in the car. Stubbs' whole thesis is that without Chinese trade, the Russian war machine doesn't just slow down, it seizes up. The vacuum left by Western sanctions, the tech, the consumer goods, the liquidity has been almost entirely filled by Beijing.
So the tap is in Xi Jinping's hand.
Completely. Therefore, if he made that one phone call and threatened to turn it off, the war would be, well, mathematically impossible for Russia to sustain.
That's a really bold assertion. It implies the sovereignty of the Kremlin is just gone.
Gone.
But I have to push back a little on the optimism of that theory. I mean, if the leverage is that absolute, if Xi really has his hand on the oxygen line.
And why hasn't he used it?
Exactly. Why are we entering another year of grinding artillery warfare? Why hasn't the call been made?
And that right there is the friction point. It's the difference between theory and reality. It all comes down to capability versus will. Stubb is saying China can stop the war.
Right. They have the power.
But the reality on the ground, and this is backed up by Finland's defense minister, is that China is currently choosing to massively finance the war chest instead.
Massively financing. That's a strong accusation for a country that claims to be a neutral peace broker.
It's completely incompatible with neutrality. I mean, when you look at the raw data, the idea of Beijing as some kind of bystander just evaporates. We have to look at the receipts.
Okay, let's follow the money. Because keeping a war economy running under the most severe sanctions in history, that takes more than just, moral support.
It takes hard currency and logistical loopholes, and lots of them. Between January 2023 and January 2025, China imported over $150 billion worth of Russian oil.
Why?
That is an enormous injection of liquidity straight into the Kremlin's budget. But what's really important for you to understand is how they're doing it. It's not just buying barrels, it's enabling the shadow fleet.
We hear that term thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Can you break down the mechanics for us? Why does a shadow fleet matter more than just normal shipping?
Because it's the key to the whole thing. The G7 imposed a price cap on Russian oil.
Right.
And the enforcement mechanism for that cap was insurance, since about 90% of all maritime insurance is handled by Western firms, mostly out of London. Russia couldn't ship its oil unless they agreed to the price cap.
Because the ships would be uninsured and no one would let them dock.
Exactly. So the West tried to use the insurance market as a choke collar.
And China helped them slip it.
Precisely. They utilize this whole fleet of aging tankers that operate totally outside the Western insurance markets. They're often self-insured or insured by these obscure state-backed entities. You combine that with the East Siberian pipeline, and Russia can bypass the price cap entirely.
It's a complete workaround.
It's a total fail-safe. I mean, in August 2025 alone, when India paused some purchases over payment issues, China immediately stepped in. They secured 15 additional cargoes, just like that. They ensure the lights stay on in the Kremlin.
So economically, they're the guarantor of the war. But let's pivot to the battlefield. Because Zelensky's frustration isn't just about oil revenue. It's about the hardware that's killing his soldiers. We've moved past the days of just finding dual-use washing machine chips, haven't we?
Oh, we're way past that. We're seeing direct military-industrial integration now, and the standout example right now is the Garpia 3 drone.
Is this just a rebadged commercial drone, or is it something more purpose-built?
It's very significant. The reports indicate the Garpia 3 is being produced inside China, but it's utilizing the expertise of visiting Russian specialists.
For deployment in Ukraine.
Specifically for deployment in Ukraine. This is a long-range attack drone, and it changes the whole calculus because it means Russia has a secure rear-area production facility that NATO can't strike.
And it's not just drones, is it? I saw something about a silent hunter system.
Yeah, the Silent Hunter.
That sounds like a laser system.
It is. It's a laser-based anti-drone weapon that is high-tech kit. This isn't surplus ammo from the Cold War. This is modern directed energy technology. The EU has finally had to acknowledge this by sanctioning a drone factory in Xinjiang and listing about 25 Chinese entities. The forensic evidence from the wreckage is undeniable.
And this is escalating beyond just supplying gear. I was reading the reports on Maritime Interaction 2025. That's the joint naval exercise they just ran in the Sea of Japan.
Yes, and that was a real wake-up call for naval planners. In the past, these drills were, somewhat ceremonial.
Ships sailing in lines, waving flags.
Exactly. This time, it included the first-ever joint submarine patrol between China and Russia.
Submarines.
Yeah.
That implies a level of trust and interoperability you just don't improvise. You have to share communications codes, sonar signatures, tactics.
That's it. Submarine warfare is the most sensitive area of naval operations. Sharing that domain signals a truly no-limits military synergy. It challenges NATO dominance under the waves, and it seriously complicates U.S. planning in the Pacific. So when Finland says China is in the driver's seat,
They mean China owns the car, buys the gas.
and is now teaching the passenger how to drive aggressively in traffic.
Which makes the diplomatic situation right now incredibly, schizophrenic. Because as we speak today, the Finnish Prime Minister, Petteri Orpo, is physically in Beijing.
Talk about walking a razor's edge. He's there meeting with Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang right now.
So let me get this straight. He's shaking hands with the leadership that is effectively funding the destruction of European security. What is the strategic play for Helsinki here?
It's the classic dilemma of the 21st century, isn't it? Finland has these two existential needs that are currently at war with each other. First, security. Finland shares a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. They joined NATO for a reason, so Orpo has to deliver a stern warning. Your support for Russia is poisoning your relationship with Europe. He also has to bring up the sabotage of the Baltic Connector pipeline.
Which involved Chinese-registered ships.
Exactly. That's a tense conversation. Please stop cutting our cables.
But what's the second need? What's pulling him in the other direction?
The economy. Finland, like the rest of Europe, is struggling with growth. Orpo didn't go alone. He brought a delegation of 20 business leaders. We're talking massive players like Keoni and Nokia. They're there to discuss the green transition and the circular economy.
It just feels incredibly contradictory. We know you're building drones that kill Ukrainians, but would you like to buy some elevators?
It is contradictory, but that's diplomacy in this fragmented world. However, there's a deeper, darker message Orpo is delivering, and it links right back to that warning from his defense minister. China is watching.
Watching for what? For weakness.
Watching the cost-benefit analysis. The Finnish doctrine links the trenches in Ukraine directly to the Taiwan Strait. The argument is that this war is a test case for the law of the jungle. If the West gets tired, if we force Ukraine to capitulate.
China sees that as a green light.
A green light to move on Taiwan, exactly. Intelligence analysts are looking at 2027, just a year from now, as a potential window. If the combined might of the NATO alliance can't stop a hollowed-out Russia and Ukraine, why would Beijing fear U.S. intervention in Asia?
So defeating Russia isn't just about saving Kyiv.
It's the primary containment strategy for China.
That puts immense pressure on the current timeline. And speaking of pressure, we can't ignore the political earthquake across the Atlantic. We have to talk about the Trump factor.
It's the variable that changes the entire equation.
Donald Trump is back in the White House, and the unpredictability is just off the charts. We've seen headlines about him wanting to seize Greenland.
It sounds absurd, but in geopolitical terms, it signals a scramble for the Arctic. Trump threatened to buy or seize Greenland to keep China and Russia out, and then followed up with threats of 100% tariffs on countries that don't back his specific peace deals.
This volatility must be terrifying for a country like Finland.
It creates a sense of abandonment. I mean, this U.S. unpredictability forces European nations to engage with China diplomatically, even if they don't trust them.
Because they can't be sure the U.S. security umbrella will hold.
They can't. It's hedging. But at the same time, it drives them deeper into NATO. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte gave a warning at Davos just this month about preventing China and Russia from getting a foothold in the Arctic.
And Finland is effectively the gatekeeper of the Arctic now.
Which is exactly why they're seeking a specific NATO Arctic security deal. While we're all looking at the Donbass, Russia and China are militarizing the North Pole. Finland is trying to lock in security guarantees before the ice melts, both literally and metaphorically.
So you've got a hot war in the east, a cold war in the north, and a chaotic ally in the west. And in the middle of all this, we keep hearing about peace. But when you look at the documents circulating in early 2026, peace looks suspiciously like surrender.
The terminology is so dangerous. There are all these competing plans, and for Ukraine, the devil is in every single detail.
Okay, let's break them down, because you need to understand what's actually being proposed. First, there's the Friends of Peace plan, pushed by China and Brazil.
This is the plan that sounds reasonable on the surface, but is just poisonous in practice. It's a 6-point framework that calls for freezing the front lines exactly where they are.
Which rewards the aggressor. It says, you stole it, you get to keep it.
Correct. It completely ignores Ukraine's territorial integrity. Zelensky has rejected it outright. But there's this new document, the leaked U.S.-Russia framework, that's even more concerning for Kyiv.
Right, the 28-point proposal. I saw one detail in there that shocked me, something about troop numbers.
You're probably looking at the cap on the Ukrainian armed forces. The proposal suggests limiting Ukraine's entire military to 600,000 personnel.
For context, Europe's own proposal was 800,000 as a bare minimum, wasn't it?
Yes. Capping the army of a nation that shares a border with an aggressor like Russia is effectively disarming them for the future. It limits their ability to defend themselves against the next invasion. And the security guarantees in this framework, they're incredibly vague.
So it leaves Ukraine in a total gray zone.
Not in NATO, but not fully independent either. It's a recipe for disaster.
It sounds like the Munich Agreement all over again. Appeasement. And Zelensky is standing firm against this.
He has to. His rejection of China as a security guarantor is rooted in hard history. He points directly to the Budapest Memorandum.
We should remind people that was the 1994 agreement where Ukraine gave up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world.
In exchange for security assurances, Russia signed it, the U.S. signed it, China gave assurances, and Zelensky's argument is simple. You failed the test in 2014 when Crimea was taken. You are failing it now by supplying the drone components that destroy our cities.
So any deal that doesn't restore the 1991 borders is just a pause.
Just an operational pause. It gives Russia 5 years to rebuild, rearm, and learn from their mistakes before they come back for the rest of the country.
And if that intro hook we started with is true, if Zelensky is right about Chinese nationals fighting in Kharkiv, then the idea of China acting as a neutral mediator is just offensive.
It's the mercenary escalation. I mean, if we have Chinese nationals holding rifles in trenches, the conflict has internationalized on the ground. It makes that neutral trade partner narrative just impossible to maintain.
Yeah.
It forces leaders like Orpo and really all of Europe to confront the fact that by buying Chinese goods, they might be indirectly funding the very mercenaries shooting at their allies.
It's a closed loop of destruction. But it really does seem like Finland is the canary in the coal mine here. They see the danger most clearly.
They do. Finland is sounding the alarm that the road to peace in Ukraine runs through Beijing. But right now, Beijing isn't paving that road.
They're mining it.
They're mining it.
Yeah.
They are fueling the war machine to test Western resolve.
So for the listener trying to make sense of all this, what is the takeaway? Why does this matter to someone sitting in London or New York or Berlin?
It matters because supporting Ukraine isn't charity. It is strategic self-defense. If the law of the jungle prevails in Ukraine, if borders can be redrawn by tanks and drone swarms, then the global order collapses. We enter an era where might makes right, and that is a much, much more dangerous world for everyone.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up. If Finland is right, if Alexander Stubb is correct, that one phone call from Xi Jinping could end this war today, what does it say about the future of global power that the call hasn't been made? Is the chaos actually the goal? Is a bleeding, distracted Europe exactly what Beijing wants to clear the path for their own ambitions?
That is the terrifying question that keeps defense analysts up at night.
It is, but we have to ask it. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.